G'day, thanks for joining me here tonight. Alright, we're going to be doing a bit of open source triage, and also new version of Reactive UI came out today, which is like awesome. Because one of the things we've been trying to do and succeeding so far, it's fantastic, is doing in succession. Open source, unless you get new maintainers and new people helping out with the project, unfortunately, if that doesn't happen, the outcome and fate for any open source project, no matter how popular it is death. So succession is very, very important. So woke up this morning and which is like wonderful. I just saw a message like from like in Outlook saying like a new version had been published in NuGet, and that's like the best thing ever, because I wasn't involved in this release and we had people who did the release without my involvement, which is like perfect. That's what we want. We want the project to be growing maintainers, we want to be growing contributors, and we want the maintainers and the contributors to have positive outcomes so they feel like their work, they can actually get their work like sooner. So the problems with the project, or they've got a new feature, people can start using them sooner. So I'll switch across to the other screen and I'll run through the backlog we've got for tonight's broadcast. Alright, so I'm just going to dump this link into chat. You can check it out. There it is. So that's a notepad, so you can actually, whilst I'm on air, actually modify and change this. So if you see a spelling mistake, you can contribute. Like this is meant to be a two-way broadcast, not just about myself or about Reactive UI or open source in general. Alright, so some news. Last 24 hours, I have some new toys. I now have a point, tilt, and zoom camera, and it is amazing. Like, I can actually just like zoom in and move and point, and as I just move it around, I can do it via network or via remote control. And this is really, really good, because previously I was having to modify the scenes to make changes, and that just really sucked. Now I don't need to. I have this amazing camera, which just is great. And good news is, soon have a second camera of these. Thank you very much. Alright, so let's go through the backlog. Alright, so one of the ways I'm actually able to use this to use this camera is I actually use this adapter. I was speaking with the folks that ran DDD Perf and was figuring how they did it, and they use this this little adapter, and it converts any HDMI input into a web camera, which means it works on Mac, Linux, Windows, no drivers, no configuration. It plugs into all existing software. So I can also use this for broadcasting games from Xbox or also from a Nintendo Switch. So it's like awesome. Thank you very much for the tip off, Sham. Thank you. Yeah, so early this morning, Reactive UI 8.4.1 came out, which is like amazing because I was not involved. There's been a couple of key people involved in this release. Thank you very much. Glenn has been the person in charge of being the release manager for this release. And we actually had two versions released today. We had 8.4.1, which contained a bunch of changes in it. So let's look at the changes. So cheers, Rodney. Thank you very much for authoring the blog post. This is perfect. I saw your question about release notes. It used to be automated, now it's manual. This needs to change. So thank you for manually updating all these release notes in line with the convention we're using historically. If anyone wants to help out and get involved in open source and help out Reactive UI, or join the team, something that can be helped out with. We want to automatically generate our release notes. Previously, we used a software called Git Release Manager. We can still use it. It's just I didn't have enough time to actually configure it, and I probably won't. So it's just a small little activity for someone who wants to get involved with open source to actually get involved with open source. Generate our release notes. All right, so this is a quite a big release, right? This is a little bit bigger than I would prefer, but Glenn couldn't release because he was waiting on me, and I just wasn't available. We had some things in the family, so I was unable to attend to open source for a couple of weeks. So the release is a little bit bigger, right? And I'll define what a little bit bigger is. It's more than a single commit. A big release now for me is more than a single commit. I want to move Reactive UI and other open source projects and prove that it works, at least in the .NET space. That one merge, it's a new release automatically. So proper continuous delivery of open source. That way, if you have a problem with Reactive UI and you contribute a fix to it, when you go back to work in the next morning, it's fixed. Right? You can actually go back to your team, or you go to your product owner or to management and go, well, I'm going to use this because I have a high degree of trust that if I run into a problem and I fix it, keyword is that if I fix it or you fix it. If you run into a problem and you fix it and it matches direction the team wants to go, you'll get a fix turnaround in 24 hours. But the key direction is you contribute the fix. It's an open source project. It's as is. It's not our job to fix your problems. Right? You chose to use the software. Always remember that you chose to use the software. We'll do our best efforts. We definitely do not want software that's broken. We don't want to release broken software, but it will happen. This is a hobby-based project, but it's seriously used in the industry. So we've got to balance that. But because it's a hobby-based project, we just got to kind of balance it. And I find it's really hard. If we wait a long time before a release, then that creates a lot of pressure on the maintainers for lots of testing, and it's just very, very hard. And it's hard to back out something because there's a large amount of work that's gone into the release. But if it's a single commit or merge in a release, you just revert that and do a new release, roll forward. And I think that's going to be a much better model for open source. All right, so bigger release. Key feature here is we now have Tizen support. So that was contributed by a Samsung engineer. Thank you very much. And that means Reactive UI now runs on televisions. And I had my Samsung television repaired today. It runs Tizen. I can't wait to run Reactive UI on my TV at home. So, thank you. Likewise, we have a special note here to hold off until 8.4.4 is released. We're using a MS Build Extras, and MS Build Extras, we didn't have a MS Build. So MS Build Extras allows us to multi-target more platforms until Visual Studio. So think of it until Visual Studio is ready. So think it's kind of like a polyfill, like it's a MS Build polyfill. And we didn't do something right, and it broke WPF. Good news is, next release happened about an hour later. So 8.4.4 is out. This information is wrong. So, let's fix it. Here we go. So this is the Reactive UI Slack room. We kind of rebuilt the community around this Slack room. If you want an invitation to it, you go to reactiveui.net/Slack. I'm going to dump a link into the chat room. And I just realized I forgot to advertise broadcast, so one tick. Welcome back. All right, if you've never seen this before, there's a community on Reddit called Watch People Code. It's a really good community, and there's a bot that automatically goes through these postings, and it tags the post wherever someone's live on air, and it's actually a good way to for discovery. So if you're looking for other people also doing similar to what I am, just go to this Reddit here. Now, when you, if you want to start contributing and advertising your posts here, Reddit has a duplicate URL detector, so you have to put a query, like a random GUID on the query string, otherwise it won't post it. So, pro tip. Done. All right, so other news. Colt, welcome to the Reactive UI team. So Colt is joining the Reactive UI team and helping review pull requests for the Android platform. Now, this is something that's available to anyone. If you use Reactive UI in production in your own projects, or even if you know Android or your platform very well, whichever the platform is, it could be Mac, iOS, Tizen, whatever platform. Really, really important. We created these groups because like asking someone to cover, I think we're at 13 platforms now. Like that's a lot of like platform knowledge. It's too big of a task, and it was kind of scaring people away, to be honest. So this is our solution. We actually broke it down into bite-sized chunks, and if you use Reactive UI and Xamarin Forms, and you want to be involved in reviewing pull requests for Xamarin Forms, just say hello. So in this case, Colt's been with us in the community now for, I think, almost 2 years. And thank you, Colt, for stepping up and offering to review pull requests for Android. Love your work. If you need help, just don't go dark. Speak with myself, speak with Rodney, speak with Glenn, speak with Paul. We're here to support you. Cheers. Good luck. Okay, so Reactive UI 8.4.4 has been released. It was a patch release on 8.4.1 that fixed a regression on WPF, but we don't have a blog post, so we should probably fix that up. And for those who just jumped into the stream, welcome. We're going through and offering release notes. So just about to dump a link into chat, and if you click on that link, you can actually help author these release notes. So, cheers. It's really weird. Edge has been sketchy, so I'm going to switch across.
Alright, so we're going to go with the 4.x. 4.x is the 4 bit 16 bit. 16 bit 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 is the 4 bit 16 bit.
Hey Dan, welcome to the stream. Sorry, it's a little bit late night. I'm failing on English. Just crafting up some release notes. So your question is, what pan tilt zoom camera do I have? So I'm actually using a Cisco CX20 connected to a Precision HD 4x camera. One tick, I'll show you. That's the camera. And yes, I have googly eyes on my other camera. It helps with eye contact. Trust me, if you do any amount of remote work or you start doing broadcasts like this, eye contact is really, really hard to do because you want to look at the screen, but you can't look at the screen because that would break eye contact. So one of the tricks I had is you put googly eyes. Works really well, trust me. So this camera is pretty damn amazing. I can't argue with the price. It was free. It cost me nothing. I have a second one arriving soon. Has a remote control, but it's also network based. It has a SOAP based API, and it's very, very easy to send network commands to it. So I can use my control pad. This is my control pad. So right now I haven't programmed my foot pedal, so I actually use this button for push to talk. And I can very easily program this control pad to actually send a SOAP-based request to the network interface. Network interface then does a serial connection, and that will move the motors. And yeah, I got full control. Hi. So I've got a second one coming. I got them for free. I'm just so over the moon because they got a 4x optical zoom. They are amazing. They would normally cost about $4,000 a pop. And I'm getting two of them. So chuffed. Alright, so I'm trying to think about what I'll do with the second one. The second PTZ camera, I was actually thinking of either using it for a second scene, and because they're PTZ, I can actually program to move in certain directions, and you'll notice this on TV. They'll actually chop between scenes to keep it interesting. So I can start doing programmatic scenes. I could have a camera up above my head, camera to the left, camera to the right, and I could just rotate between two different cameras, or I could have one camera focused on one shot and then I immediately switch to another shot so you don't see this awkward left, right, up, down. I could have it kind of have like the zoom in and pull out at the same time to start effects. The sky's the limit. If I don't use it for that, I'm thinking I might use the second camera as a replacement for my document camera. So I got this document camera and it's actually pretty good. And I haven't really used it on stream yet, but the idea behind the document camera is to, if I need to draw something up as part of for collaboration, I can. I guess, how long have I been streaming? About a year now, but not consecutively. I've been researching and thinking a lot about format and like how, what would be interesting for people to, like why would someone do streaming? Why should I do streaming? The answer, I pretty much came down to it. Most nights I'm doing software development by myself, doing open source work. So instead of doing it by myself, why don't we just do this? And hopefully someone like yourself, Dan, come and say hi. And I hope, and I've seen it a couple of times happen already, they've actually helped out and they're staying involved in the open source projects. And it's just a way of improving communication, because most people's experience with open source is just the issue tracker, and that's not really a good experience. So I'm hoping this is a thing. I caught up with a couple people at LinuxConf AU in the beginning of the year, convinced them to do it, and they've in their Google Developer Advocates and Apache Spark and a few other areas, and they're having some great successes. They're matching my experiences. So when they're doing open source triage, they're people that is going through and just talking about what's on their head and then writing down to words, and other people can jump into the stream. So, cool. Got any other questions? Let me know. Yeah, right. I've thought about this a lot as well, because at LinuxConf, it's one of the biggest open source conferences here in Australia, and one thing that's continually pops up as a topic is how do we kind of make open source more inclusive. And I think if we had more benevolent dictators or BDFLs or servant leaders or people in charge of running projects, just doing the human side as well as the code side, projects would be a lot more healthier. Because in the Linux project, at LinuxConf I had a lot of hallway track conversations with other maintainers, and they're all pretty burnt out. There's definitely some problems in that community. And it's not necessarily just the leader. There's other things with power dynamics and structures, but I'm not going to get into that now. If you want to know more about that, there is one person I can recommend. Just let me know. I can dig up their blog post. It was in the Intel team. He's trying to put data to it, and he actually successfully put data to the problem. Yeah, I don't know if he would be a good person to be on stream. But I don't know, I've never met him in real life. People do have different personas in face-to-face than they do when they're words behind a keyboard, so never know. Be kind of cool. Maybe it would change things. Also, if you're looking for a way to get involved in open source, you want to help myself out or start the path on joining the Reactive UI team, we used to generate these notes automatically. It'd be kind of cool if someone also helped out and got us back onto automatic release note generation, because this has taken me 15 minutes and this used to take nothing. I could probably spend time working on it, but I'm trying to focus on stream and other aspects rather than focusing purely on Reactive UI. I want to bring more people into Reactive UI. That's the purpose of the stream. You know what? But he's operating a project at a pretty massive scale. It's like the only project that I think it gets close to the complexity of the Linux kernel is Kubernetes. There's a lot of cool things coming out of communities. Look at what the Rust community is doing and their community automation. They're kind of leading the pack, so to say. And there are a lot of open source communities looking at what Rust is doing. FreeBSD, there's some of the committers, they were looking at Rust and citing a talk from a lady, a speaker in the Rust community, and they're doing some really cool stuff. Likewise, I recommend if you're trying to do like scaled open source, the Kubernetes team has got some really cool things going on. Like they actually have a dashboard, and they divided everything up into SIGs and teams. I'm not actually part of the meat and the fashion, so I don't know if it's working well because I am not actually involved, but from the outside it looks like they've got some stuff figured out that I've always wondered about, and props to them. My machine, it's just a MetaBox laptop. It's pretty beefy, and it does pretty well. In case you're wondering, this is what it looks for me. This is my software. This is my broadcast. I don't use OBS. I actually use software called vMix, and vMix is used for professional outside broadcasting for television and sports events. I can do some really cool things like instant replays on any one of my feeds. I can play with audio settings that I just can't in OBS. There's just so many reasons why I think this is a much better approach. If you want to just dump your screen onto the internet, OBS is great. But if you actually want to, like take it much further, much further, vMix, like awesome. Like there's little things here. Let me pull up these shortcuts. Alright, so this is a web panel for vMix, and I can load this up on an old iPad or an iPhone. Now this is going to be really hard for me to show, but you've probably seen in TV there's these little lights on top of the camera. And these little lights on top of the camera are called tally lights. Alright, sweet, I have a tally. So these are tally lights, little lights on top. So one of the things vMix has that OBS does not have is the ability to have tally lights, and this is built in. I have to do no software development. So I can just dump an old mobile phone on top of a camera, and this color of the background will automatically change, and this creates indicator to me which camera is active. So as I start moving towards multiple cameras, I can know which camera to look at. Really important. So I'm going to switch between a couple scenes, and you'll soon see this color changes from green to orange, and this is automatic. As soon as I press a button on the control pad, it switches. There we go. And that's changing based on a scene or an input, if the input is active or not. So I can just change this very simply to be camera driven, or so many things I can do. Other things vMix can do is it works very, very well with my control pad. Let me just switch across. Yeah, so that's my computer. It's just a standard gaming laptop, nothing too special about it. This is my control pad, and one of the things vMix has full MIDI support, and I can control my camera. If I so desired, I could use an Xbox controller, or I can actually have a thing called an activator, And the activator is essentially these lights on this keypad. So up in the top right hand corner over here, this is my production control. This is wherever I'm recording, I'm on air. And if I want to end the show up in the top right hand corner, that will do that. And I can configure the lights on this control pad. And I think it's very important to have a dedicated control pad. And so that's an activator. We can also have shortcuts, and shortcuts can switch scenes. They could be program things. So when I switch between my scenes over here, there we go. There's always a dedicated button for whatever I'm doing. That way it's always there. There's no context switching. It's much safer this way. So yeah, I actually have two USB hubs. I picked them up last week. I can't really show them, but oh, maybe I could. Let's try. I have a second set of headphones there. One tick. This headphone is my solo headphones. This represents it's unamplified, and this helps me work with levels. I'm still learning how to do levels properly. These headphones are amplified. They represent the master audio output. So depending if what I'm doing, I switch between my input sets. Something that you really can't do with OBS. So the question is, what hubs? There you go. So I have two 7-port hubs. They're USB 3, they're powered, and essentially I'm almost pumping too much I/O bandwidth. I had to remove a couple connectors because I'm pumping a lot of I/O. And welcome back. Yeah, thanks Scoping. Thanks for joining. I see you jumping in from Twitter. That's cool. If you want notifications when I'm on air, head over to ghuntley.com/live, and there's a link to Twitch, and you just press follow and you get notifications. There's a Google Calendar there as well. That's awesome. And yeah, so I suppose last month, almost pretty much full time, been working on this, getting myself set up. There's a whole thing to this you're not seeing, apart from the physical. I'll quickly show you if you find this interesting. I'll go down this path. No, I don't really do much WordPress. I did a lot of WordPress back in 2004, but I kind of moved away from using that as a CMS. These days, personally, I just use Git and I use Netlify. And I just use Hugo and I just commit markdown files and generates my website. So I don't cover much on WordPress, I'm sorry. There's a few people that do. More generic LAMP style of things, but I don't have a recommendation off the top of my head. What you could do is this. Head across to Reddit, r/watchpeoplecode, and you'll find an index of people who are doing this. It's a very small, tight community, but it's growing. So if you know WordPress, there's your opportunity. You can specialize and become the expert on WordPress and teach people how to use it. I'm using this to encourage people to get involved with open source and grow the community of reactive UI. All right, so previously alluded to, there's more to the physical, and I've spent pretty much a month thinking about continually like small little things, like something's gone wrong or something's gone right, and it's been a continual process of reincorporating those ideas and that feedback. So after every broadcast, I have a journal. And generally has a game plan, like covering what I did on that stream. Before I go on air, typically when I press broadcast, I'm actually going through and creating this like a rough game plan of what I want to achieve. That means it keeps me back on topic, because we're kind of off topic right now, but that's cool. And the end of every stream is a retrospective. I always wrap up the stream with a retrospective at the end and commit it in there. So last stream that we had 14 people peak, which is fantastic. I find that the stream goes all the way up to 60 people if you broadcast in a PST compatible time zone. So here's the production software. And what you're not really seeing, because this is a small 1080p, I actually have clocks down there, and it's something I'm always keeping an eye on. What time is in PST, what time is in London, what time in Mumbai. Key critical time zones to hit. And you always, at the end of every stream, you're looking at things like LastPass, like it discloses, it can, like the autofill could disclose information you may not want to disclose. So at the end of that stream, I immediately wrote down what it was, and I configured LastPass to automatically log out when I close the browser. Yeah, so it's a good question. What is Twitch affiliate? Twitch affiliate essentially allows for monetization. Personally, I'm not going down that route. I would much prefer it if people support me on Patreon. Twitch affiliate, there's two levels with Twitch. There's affiliate, and then there's partner. Partner is the next level up. Affiliate is a legal contract with Twitch for exclusivity. And in exchange, you get some money. But the money you get is from your viewers. So the viewers are subscribed to your channel, they give you bits. Which is 1 cent per bit, so 100 bits is $1. It can be quite a substantial amount of money, and Twitch does have the best platform. But I would much prefer, if income stream is coming, it's coming from Patreon, something external from the platform. I guess it's a safety measure. So that's ghuntley.com/support. And at the opening of the stream before this one, I went into great detail about Patreon versus OpenCollect and why you would choose Patreon for personal reasons or why you would choose OpenCollect for an open source project. Okay, so affiliate. Okay, so it seems I've talked about upsides. Affiliate essentially is people who view can support you financially, but that's one of the upsides. The other upside is they will transcode your feed down to lower resolutions, which is a really good perk. Downsides: exclusivity. They will not allow me or anyone else to broadcast on any other platform. Now, right now, I'm broadcasting on, I think it's 14 different platforms all at once, right? And I'm going for massive reach, and that's the entire point of this. I want reach, especially in these early days. And signing a contract with Twitch would, they have a rule that's saying you're not allowed to broadcast to any other platform concurrently of the same stream. You can broadcast to other platforms, but not the same content. There's also a proviso about exporting that content out. It must be exclusive for a period of time until it's exported to YouTube. I haven't read too much into it. It just seems like it can be good, but there seems like a lot of downsides. I might change my opinions on this, but for now, I much prefer Patreon. Cool. Going back, and then we'll get out of this rabbit hole. So there's a retrospective, there's a game plan. And when I go on air, you might not notice normally this screen, like starting soon. What's happening there is there's a checklist, and this checklist is getting quite large, and it does everything from advertising to logging out a LastPass for security, setting all audio levels at the correct level. And a couple times when I first starting out, I did not get my audio levels right at all, and they're still not good. I'm catching up with an audio engineer on the weekend to help me out. We're gonna do some stuff. It's gonna be cool. And whatever we learn, what the optimal settings for my room, for noise gate, for compression, for each one of my inputs, we're going to update this document. And this document becomes my checklist. And it's quite manual, but the idea is vMix can be programmed. Once I know what I want, I can just program it. So I just have a PowerShell script to execute, and it just sets everything exactly as it should be. But there's no point automating until you know exactly what needs to be automated. So it's completely manual for now. The other thing that's kind of going on in the background, that's the checklist, there's a retrospective, there's a game plan, is trying to figure out format. Like format for streaming. Do I do just coding? Is that kind of boring though? Do people enjoy just watching coding in the background? Do I do a retrospective or like a lessons learned, like a recap of what I've done in the previous week? I've got some good experience, got good feedback from those. They seem very popular because people tuning in learn stuff based off my successes and fails, and normally there's an outcome. The other format I'm experimenting with is this one here. So this was just added in the last 24 hours. I haven't done a stream on it yet. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a Visual Studio Live code, or VS Live, and allows people to share their projects. I open a copy of Visual Studio. You open a copy of Visual Studio. Pewds, thank you very much for the follow. So yeah, I open up a copy of Visual Studio, you open up a copy of Visual Studio, and it automatically shares the project, all the files, all the extensions back between me and you, which is cool. Like, incredibly cool. No Git, no cloning, none of that. And each person gets their own cursor. So the idea is, well, let's pair. Like, instead of just me doing software development, why don't we just pair? People haven't really experienced good pairing. It's talked about and its benefits with extreme programming, but people don't actually get the opportunity to practice it, or they haven't really experienced it, or they've experienced it and it's been bad. I'm not saying that I'm good, but I know if I do it, I'm going to get better. So the idea is, let's pair. Let's build an application. So what we've got here is a bank. We've got a whole bunch of user stories, and the user stories is like a bank account must not have negative balance, and all sorts of rules about calculation of interest rates, etc. And there can be quite a lot of complexity here. And it's just 3 or 4 different stories, and how we implement this doesn't matter. We can do microservices, or we could do monolith, we can do it in Rust, we can do it in Golang, we can do it in .NET, we can do some in Haskell. Doesn't matter. It's just whoever, like, at the time, we just pair together and we build it together on the air. I think it could be a winning format. It could be quite good. Jeff Fritz is having some success on .NET, but he's focusing just on .NET. I prefer to use this time to also learn other technologies, because I've been doing .NET now for like 10 years, and I'd prefer to learn something else and start diversifying back to my Unix roots. So yeah, check it out. That's ghuntley.com/live. Yeah, you're right. Pairing would be much better than like Stack Overflow. And I've had times when I've been doing software development on air, and I've gone, I don't know how to do this. And someone just like you, Coder Dan, what they do is like they go look at the way to do it, and like I come back 10 minutes later and the answer's right there. So there is a possible for concurrency. So this is going to be very exciting. I hope this takes off. Now, going back to my backlog, one of the things was releasing new release notes. I've authored them, but they're not live. I don't know why. So let's go look at the build, see what's wrong. Welcome back. So we're using Visual Studio Online, or VSTS, and let's go look at the CI job, why it failed. Strange, it says it completed successfully. Alright, so it built successfully. Let's look at the releases. Maybe the release job didn't work okay. Really strange, the release worked. Worked. Alright, one tick, a little bit of privacy. I'm just going to log into webhost to figure out what went wrong. For those that are just tuning in, cheers. Thanks for joining me. Hey, welcome back. So I use Netlify. I highly recommend, if you're using GitHub Pages, you get off GitHub Pages. Netlify is just that good. Yeah, I think it might be a caching error, so let's have a look. 1058 should be good. Probably my browser cache. That's just weird. Okay. Alright, I'm just going to park this because this is going to be a rabbit hole. I'll fix it off air. And I'll kick off another build. Alright, kicking off another build again. So kicking off a new release. I'll just wait it out, let's see how it goes. Yeah, it looks to be a bug. So it's not actually a caching error. It looks like there's something wrong with my index page. For some reason, this is not being included. That sucks. Maybe it's an ordering issue. 8.4.1 is coming before 8.4.4. Yep. All right, one tick. Welcome back. Cool. So one of the points of this stream is actually succession, is to make sure it's just not myself that Reactive UI, I'm not the only one carrying the burden of maintaining this software, and we're spreading the burden around. And we're also bringing more people into the project because we want the project to grow. Because if the project doesn't grow, eventually it will die. That's a natural fate of any open source project. If it's not growing, eventually it's going to die. So about to go into all the outstanding requests for succession. So we have a room in Slack. So if you go to reactiveui.net/Slack, you'll get an invitation to this room. And we have many different rooms. We've got a software development room, we've got an end user support room, documentation, samples, and succession. Okay, so Colt is now joined the team. Thank you very much, Colt. He's been with us for about 2 years now, and he's going to be reviewing Android pull requests. If you know Android or a particular platform like WinForms, WPF, and you want to join Reactive UI or you want to join an open source project, we'd love to have you. Specifically, I've created these teams, and these teams, if you're in them, you'll get notification to review a pull request for your particular platform that you know. All right, so succession. So one of the most important things on succession is it doesn't bottleneck on something. So this morning, Glenn had actually fixed a regression in a release, and he fixed it pretty damn fast, within an hour or so. But he had to wait a couple hours for Sydney to wake up or New York to wake up. So that's bad. Let's fix that. Let's remove the single points of failure. So Glenn, you now have access to approve releases. Seems fair. Seems the right choice. So we use VSTS. We don't host the source code in VSTS, but we use the release management functionality. We need to invite Glenn in. and I don't know where the section is. I need to invite someone into my tenant, so I'm just going to do this quick Googling. If you know, let me know in chat. Alright, looks like we go to settings and users. I don't have that. I might not have enough access, so I'm going to ask Oren to help out here. Welcome back. So my mate Nick Randolph, he actually maintains MVVM Cross. It's another framework for making desktop and mobile applications. Reactive UI is the exact same thing. We steal ideas backwards and forwards all the damn time. And you'll find this common. So there is no real enemies as such. People always see, for some reason, they see software as React versus Angular, but like you get down to the crux of it, the React team is hanging out with the Angular team, like the best mates. Doing this stuff is really, really hard. So the tribalism hurts. It doesn't hurt anyone. So Nick has done this really good blog post. I reckon everyone should read it. And it's like how to contribute to MVVM Cross, and how to contribute MVVM Cross and what's in this blog post is very similar how to contribute to any open source project. I'd love to do a follow-up just for Reactive UI and to specialize it for Reactive UI. So they go into here a couple things, like for Reactive UI, observables have a particular, we're built on the reactive extensions, which is observables. They have a particular contract on how they function. And the contract is there's next, error, success. Now, if next has an exception, then error is going to trigger. And next won't trigger again unless you have a retry operator or you handle that failure condition. And this trips up a lot of newbies straight away because they go, why is my next pipeline failing? And the solution to that is for Reactive UI, go into the exception settings and enable break on first chance exceptions. And what that does is anytime an exception is thrown, doesn't matter if it's caught or uncaught, the Visual Studio will break, and that gives you that allows you to figure out at the exact point that caused the pipeline of next to fail. This is documented in our README and also on the Reactive UI website. But it's cool to go through it. A lot of people don't know this setting even exists in Visual Studio. You should always have this enabled, no matter what project you're on. Especially if it's like a brownfield project you've never seen before and you're in your first 48 hours in that project. Now, Nick's got some really cool ideas here, and this is something Reactive UI is probably going to steal. If you have a problem with MVVM Cross, they ask you to submit a pull request to their samples, or what they call playground. And the idea is you submit a failing result, like you reproduce what's failing in the samples. And that means the maintainer, when they're reviewing the source code, they're looking at source code that's familiar. It also forces the contributor to reproduce the problem in the smallest possible way. And it's very easy to tell when it succeeds and fails, because you should have CI set up on this. So you would have tests that would prove they would submit the fix, but at the same time submit the test. And that just becomes an additional notch in the belt. It's safety to make sure this regression never happens ever again. Yeah, so now a lot of people don't. I'm getting getting late towards the end of the stream, so we can do a couple things in the debugger, maybe. Like, a lot of people don't know that you can do time travel debugging in Visual Studio. You can actually rewind the stack and see what the values were previously before they mutated. You can, there's a REPL window. When I say REPL, I mean like this. REPL. So the things you can do in Chrome, where you can actually do software, you can do software development live without having to reload, like it's a live interactive experience. Like, and you can play around with it, like. This is a REPL. You can do this in Visual Studio. Like, you don't need to stop your application to debug. It's called the immediate window. And if you go to the immediate window, it's in the debug window. It goes debug windows other. And the immediate window allows you to do this with .NET, with C# and F#. And you can expect variables. You can actually do software development in there. So a lot of people, when they run into problems or they're doing software work, they stop the application, they do their work, they start it again, and it takes a long time for it to start up. That's really slow. You don't need to do that. Use the immediate window. And then when you find out exactly what you need to do, just copy the code back, send it back to the editor. And it's very, very useful for debugging. Because most of the time when you're debugging, you're looking at your watch windows, and there's a lot of times when you, like, say you got an array with 20 items in it, like, and you just want, like, you want the nth one out of that array. Well, in the immediate window, you just go variable dot link operator, and you get it. Right, simple. No more like clicking and counting manually and going through it. There are a lot of really cool, powerful things in Visual Studio. People don't learn them. And it's something I look for when I interview people, is do they learn their tools. Alright, so introducing Octobox. If you've never seen it before, it's a it can be run locally on your local computer, or it can be run as a website. And what it does is it integrates in with GitHub and all the notifications, and it is gold. It is so good. Like, if you're doing a lot of open source, it's impossible to use GitHub. The UX isn't mature enough. This is sold by the open source community. It's called Octobox. You should use Octobox. Disable those email notifications. Use Octobox. Just log in when you got time and just triage and do the things you need to do. And Andrew is one of the creators of Octobox. He was asking, can you help out? Like, can you? What are your suggestions? And Andrew, if you happen to see this, nothing. It's like there's like one or two niggly things, but Octobox is just awesome. I wouldn't change a thing except for this. Yeah, that's right. So there's two. There's the interactive window and the immediate window. The interactive is outside the context. The immediate is when the application is running in the context, and people just don't know about it. They never learn it, and they could gain literal hours back of their life every week by just knowing the immediate window. And one bit, I'm just going to try and find my position. That way they can actually see what the problem is. Cheers, Andrew. Okay, open source licensing. So you'll find historically in the Microsoft space that people use MSPL, Microsoft Public License. With the new, in the last couple of years, everything's been open source to MIT. And I kind of strongly recommend if you're on MSPL to go over to MIT, that way you're in alignment with what Microsoft's doing. But also it increases your reach. There are a lot of companies that consider MSPL an exotic exotic license, whereas MIT is a known one. And if you have software, you're bringing software into a company and it's not on the whitelist, and often MSPL is not on the whitelist, you have to go within your organization and engage the legal team, engage your executives all the way up. It becomes a huge mess. So one of the best things you can do to make open source easy for your consumers is standardize on a language that's standardized with the ecosystem. If you wish to use GPL, that's fine. I kind of support GPL to a certain extent. I also support MIT. I normally do either a variant of GPL of MIT or MIT depending on the goals of the project. But having exotic licenses that most people don't see is a huge hindrance. So let's change it. So what we had there was the two people who are most actively involved with the project, their contributions, and they both agreed to change the license, but no one's done the commit. So let's just do the commit. Let's kill this music.